It's the conversation for this Thursday, the 3rd of April. My name is Blaise Bryant. Today we speak with Andrew Blaise. Since he was a child, Andrew has had a love for creative writing and theater, to the point where he has degrees in both. He has also been the lighting technician on The Martha Stewart Show. We spoke in May 2012, and I asked him how he developed his love for theater.
I think inherently a lot of actors are show-offs deep down. There's an when you're on stage and you get applause for yourself, for things that you're doing, it's a real rush, and if you love that, it's something that you want to recreate. So throughout grade school and high school and college, I did as much acting as I could, and then my career path sort of became a little more convoluted and twisty once I got to New York City.
I see, but when did you first start getting involved?
Oh, well, my best friend and I, my father wrote us stand-up comedy routines when we were in 3rd grade for talent shows. So once a year we would get together for a new sketch, and our chorus teacher, who organized anything related to the performing arts in that small town elementary school, decided that he would take us on the road for a very short tour down the road to the retirement home for older folks, and I think that hooked me, I think.
Did it have something to do with the fact that the older folks are just so incredibly appreciative in terms of any sort of a performance that they hear?
I know that's true, and that could very well be. I don't have a particular memory or sense of that as a child. I think what affected me was the fact that if you took a 4x8 riser and set it down in a room, and you had a microphone, suddenly you had a stage. It didn't have to be on, in the auditorium of the elementary school. It didn't have to be in a prescribed theater. You could make a performance space pretty much anywhere. And I think that was exciting to me too. And then also that was something that's kind of launched my technical theater career as well, because I was very interested in the setting up of the PA system and plugging in the microphones and seeing how that worked.
What goes into setting up a PA system?
Well, in those days, it was very simple. It was a microphone, which is your source. You plug that into an amplifier, which takes the signal at a very low voltage level and boosts it, puts a lot of oomph behind it, and then speaker wire out of that goes to speaker. And that's your very basic sound system. And the amplifier gets power, and there you go. And Bob's your uncle, as we say in the theater business, which means and everything's okay.
Absolutely. And the thing that amazes me about the sound technology, and speaking as a musician who has a sound setup back home, what amazes me is that you have that set up now, and it's just in one 10-inch speaker.
Yes, now, but that was, my initial experience with that stuff was in the 70s, and of course now, everything's available digitally, and as you say, yes, you have powered speakers, with amplifiers built into them already. The technology has played a big role in evolving in what we do, although in a certain sense, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
And what do you mean by that?
You still have to satisfy the basic elements of doing technical theater. Even though, let's say, last night, for example, I stage managed the opening of a dance show for college in New York, in New York City. And I had student operators for my lighting board and for my sound console. And even though in the sound it's computerized, and they're playing back digitally, there's still a component that they're going to operate. There's still a button that they're going to press, and they're still going to wait for me to say go before they do it.
Now, I want to talk about first the creative writing, and then we'll step back and profile the lighting and Martha Stewart experience.
Sure.
When did you develop an affinity for creative writing?
Well, I grew up as the child of two English professors. I grew up in a college town, and so books and words were simply a part of the fabric, of everyday life. People who are writers, who are interested in writing, are also readers. They go hand in hand. So you start as a kid by reading and gobbling up whatever you can, and that experience develops your vocabulary, expands your worldview, and you see how other writers make sense of the world through their writing. I think that's what a large part of writing is about. And so you maybe start keeping journals on the side and writing, and trying to make sense of the world in your own words. So it was always there in the background. And after college, when I was in New York, I was, at some point making a go of it as an actor, but mostly being a freelance electrician and then stage manager. But on the side, I started taking writing workshops so that when it came time for graduate school, when I had sort of taken lighting from a design standpoint as far as I could, I said, well, it's going to be lighting design or creative writing. What do I want to do? And it felt more of a fit artistically to go the route of creative writing.
And you talk about the whole aspect of learning to read, essentially learning to write. Now, did you have to read above the grade level, so to speak?
Well, I did. I didn't have to. It just kind of happened that way. It was a small school. I think we had, when I got a little older, we had one building for grades 7 through 12, and that was, I think, 600 kids. So there was like 100 kids in my class. There weren't a lot of us, but yeah, I was definitely gobbling up the books for sure.
That's very interesting. And you talk about taking writing workshops. What are some of the elements that are in those writing workshops?
The basic structure of a writing workshop is that there's a group of you and a teacher, and you go off and work on whatever it is you're working on, be it poetry, be it prose, playwriting. And you if there's 8 people in your class, you make 8 copies, you distribute it. Sometimes sometimes it's an on-the-spot discussion, but mostly they take it home and read it, and then make comments and bring it in, and then you talk about it. And from there, the protocol varies. Sometimes you get teachers who will say, okay, the writer is not allowed to say anything. You've got to be a fly on the wall and listen to people talk about your writing. That can be very disconcerting. You soon develop, discover how thick your skin is when people are talking about your work. Other teachers allow the writers to comment, and hopefully people are making constructive comments. That's not always the case.
Absolutely.
One of the things that it teaches you, which is valuable in all walks of life, particularly in the arts, is to be able to filter out the comments that don't help you and be able to take as much as you can from the ones that do.
And I would imagine that is both a blessing and a curse.
That's true. Sometimes you're never quite sure if you're taking it, it's not always so clear which bits of advice are helping you and which aren't. But it's a process. And, I think graduate school is a process. And it's okay to, part of that process is learning what helps you as a writer, what helps you as an artist. Some criticism just isn't appropriate because it doesn't speak to what you're trying to do. And that needs to be discovered, and an intense kind of conservatory training like an MFA is a very good place to do that. Not the only place, but it's a good place.
Now, when you were in grad school and honing your writing skills, what do you think best helped you?
Developing a method of working, developing a method of revising, and throwing out the idea that you write something and it's done. I can't remember the specific number, but when Melville was writing Moby Dick, he wrote the novel something like 30 times before he settled on the final manuscript. Perseverance, I think. Although I'm not sure I quite got that in grad school, but for people who submit manuscripts, they can submit many times to many agents and many publishing houses and get turned down, and then hit something. So developing a thick skin, and that's true for dancers, for actors, for anybody who's producing creative work.
Absolutely, and definitely something that somewhat of a life theme. I've had the great pleasure of talking with a couple of broadcasters recently, and that's essentially what they said. You have to be able to handle rejections and such.
Yeah, it's inevitable. They happen. There's a great Frank Sinatra song that I, from time to time, like to check in with. It's called That's Life.
One of my favorites.
Oh, you know it. So, yeah. Riding high in April, shot down in May.
And I hope that's not the case.
Not this year, but of course it's a metaphor.
Right.
But sure, you gotta pick yourself up and what did you say? Pick yourself up and get back in the race.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully we're riding on top in June.
Yeah, exactly. There are ups and downs.
You have me very tempted to start singing that song now.
That's why karaoke was invented. It's a good one for sure.
Absolutely. And now let's step back into the lights, so to speak.
Sure.
When did you start playing around with lights?
Ninth grade. We did a production of. We had done big musicals up to that point, Carousel, and some others, and there's lots of roles for people in those shows. Then we did a smaller show, a Neil Simon show with music by Marvin Hamlish called "They're Playing Our Song," which had a romantic lead and a romantic couple, and then a 3-member chorus of each sex, boys and girls. Well, I didn't get in, so instead I wanted to be connected to the show, so I ran a very small light board.
And what goes into running a light board?
Well, nowadays they're computerized mostly, and they're programmed during technical rehearsals, and then the cues are executed by just hitting one button usually, or maybe a couple of different sliders. But back in the day, we used manual boards that for each dimmer there is a slider or a potentiometer that you can set the level for. You're varying the voltage from 0 to 100 that you send out to the light, depending on how bright the designer wants it. So it's a bunch of dials, and if you have a larger manual board, a crossfader where you can crossfade between two scenes. While the play is going on, you can preset another scene for a change of light, and then pull a big lever down as a crossfader. So it was very hands-on and technical, and I got to push a control and watch the light change and know that I was making that happen.
I would imagine that is quite challenging, especially considering you were used to running sound before.
Prior to that, I had plugged. I like to just call it plugging stuff in. My career in plugging stuff in started in 3rd grade, but it's very related. And for me, it centers around metal. I don't like carpentry that much. I can't make sense of wood. But things that are metal, I like working with those, and that's lighting and sound.
Now, when did you, so to speak, find your corner in the sky in terms of lighting and realize, I want to do this?
First of all, an excellent reference to the musical Pippin, by the way. Well, all this time, one is telling oneself, "Oh, you'll move to New York, you'll be an actor. You'll move to New York, you'll be an actor," and you have a good time doing shows in college, and that's all well and good. And I also did some stage managing and managed to get hired onto the crew of the Performing Arts Center attached to Binghamton, SUNY Binghamton, we called it at the time. It's Binghamton University now. And went to New York and did, in fact, hook up with enough freelance gigs to make a living. All the time you'd say, well, we'll get to the acting. And meanwhile, it was very clear how to make a living as an electrician. It was very concrete. You went, you hung the lights, you focused the lights, you operated the show, and then you took the lights down, and then you went home. Then there was something about that made a lot of sense to me, that climbing the mountain of trying to be an actor in New York City, which is very difficult, that seemed a little more incomprehensible. So I finally had to throw in the towel when I realized in the summer of, I think, 94, 95, that I really didn't enjoy rehearsing. This is kind of a big realization, and it occurred to me. And people have always said, and people do say to actors, you only go into this business if you cannot do anything else. That your body wills you to do this. You must pursue this work. And although I really loved it, and I truly do love it, and would one day, be happy to get involved in community theater and get back up on the boards, I don't have to do it. And that was a big realization. And working with lighting, made me happy. It was fun, and it kept me involved. And I was able to exercise my instinct to break things apart from an analytical standpoint, and I got into lighting programming, which is operating the computer boards, which is what led me to Martha Stewart.
I do want to take a step back. What made you stop enjoying rehearsing?
Well, in college, everything is pretty clear-cut. You've got your rehearsal spaces. You've got people that you go to school with for 4 years. You know the players once you've been there for, you survive your freshman year. In the city, you've got to sort of cobble all of that together yourself, including taking acting class as dancers. Professional dancers take class nearly every day of their lives. It's something that's very automatic for them. For actors, sometimes who come to the city, it may take them a while to realize that actually you need to do that too. You need to stay in class. So I found an acting class, and that involved, getting together off-site with scene partners to rehearse. And I just found the whole thing to be a pain in the tuchus. I thought, geez, I don't want to be schlepping props around the city for people who don't show up, and I wound up getting very annoyed at my scene partners and not being able to embrace the idea of finding the work through rehearsal. So I think that's what it was. It was once I was in class. If I was in a show, that was different. That process I enjoyed, but I had to be in class to keep my chops up. I was getting some auditions and not really having the acting chops to capitalize on them. So I went back to class and made some pretty big realizations in class.
What do you mean by the acting, quote-unquote, chops?
Technique. It's technique, for sure. It's technique that I would have gotten had I decided to do an MFA in acting, which my best friend, the guy I did stand-up comedy, he did that. He went off and did a 3-year degree in advanced technique. And I just didn't want to be in school anymore. I thought, no, I'm gonna go find my fame and fortune, and I sort of conveniently had skipped a couple of steps, which you can't do. My father used to say, there's no free lunch, as men of a certain era would, and Dad's right. There's some things you can't get around.
Absolutely, and now we'll step back into the lighting scene and talk about how you were able to get the job as a lighting technician for the Martha Stewart show.
Well, there's the skills you bring to the table, and then there are the people who invite you there. I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that most of the gigs that I've gotten in technical theater I can trace back to one of two people, both of whom are connected to Binghamton, where I went to school. Once you get in the door, then you have a chance to show what you know, or you also get a chance to show how you can keep your mouth shut and absorb, which the older guys certainly appreciate. But the person who got me into Martha Stewart was a programmer who went to Binghamton before me, and she was having a baby, and so she wanted to go on a maternity leave and needed someone to cover the lighting console for her. So I came in as a 3-month replacement, and at the end of that, she decided to stay home with the baby, and so I stayed. And I stayed at Martha Stewart for 3 seasons, and that was my introduction also to daytime TV, as opposed to theater, dance, opera, which is what I had done before.
And what was that experience like?
Oh, it was fantastic. There's, one big divide for us in this business is art and commerce. And, the cliche is that the art is more rewarding, but there's no money in it, and that the commercial side is not as interesting, but it pays well. And that's sometimes, that's at a large part that's true, but there's a lot of crossover. There's one of the things that's exciting about working in theater and dance is that it's live. Well, television can be that way too. So I was fortunate to work on a live TV show where no matter what kind of chaos was going on in the studio, at 10 o'clock, the theme song was going to play and we were going to start. So that was exciting. And there were several areas of the set that were different. There was the main kitchen, there was the craft room, there was the potting shed, and there was another area adjacent to the kitchen we called the swing area, where the doors that swung open, where various things could get set up. So on a daily basis, we were changing a lot, and there were 17 or 18 moving lights in our rig, so I had to refocus those with a computer every day. So there was a lot to keep one occupied, and a lot of beautiful things. Martha Stewart's work is very beautiful and pleasant to look at and delicious. The fringe benefit was there's a lot of stuff coming out of the test kitchen. There's a fully blown test kitchen on her set, and things would come out where they would allow the crew to sample, or indeed take home. At the end of the Halloween special, there's 60 pumpkins on the set, and so we said, "Hey, take a pumpkin home, everybody." So that went on too.
Now, what was your favorite Martha Stewart culinary delight?
That's a tough one. Well, the first season we got one of her new cookbooks as a present, so I still make recipes out of that. I'm still enjoying Martha, from time to time in the kitchen, in my own kitchen.
Terrific.
I can't recall a specific thing, but I'll tell you one thing. The hot dog show was fun because competing hot dog makers from around the country had all their stuff there. So we had probably 70 or 80 or 90 different hot dogs, all of which had to be sampled. That was a good day.
And what's so amazing to me is the fact that they're actually competitive hot dog makers. Simply because simply because it's just such a simple, little summer treat, I guess.
It absolutely. From there, it's grown out, with the more elaborate our cuisine gets, it trickles down to everything, including hot dog stands. And, of course, for the hot dog stand who makes it onto the Martha Stewart show, that's press that you cannot buy. So, you'd have hot dogs wrapped in bacon. You'd have hot dogs wrapped in ricotta and then bacon. You'd have hot dogs that were, put together with just all variety of stuff. I'm drawing a blank now. The bacon, of course, was a big one.
That sounds so good right about now.
Yeah. I had to really watch. After a while, I had to watch what I ate because you can easily put on a ton of weight at that place.
It certainly does seem like it. Now, as a lighting technician, what did you do?
Well, at that show, I was exclusively a programmer. My job was to turn on the lighting console in the morning, the computer that talks to the dimmers that the lights are connected to, or in the case of electronics, talks directly to the electronics, and work with the lighting designer. The lighting designer sits in the control room in a TV studio or in a theater. During tech rehearsals, would sit at a tech table in the middle of they set a table up in the middle of the house so that the creative team can make their decisions. And you put on a headset, and the guy says, okay, you see all that blue backlight? Let's put that at 50%. So there's a series of keystrokes that I would enter into the computer to bring those lights to 50%. And he would look at it and say, yeah, that's a little bit bright. Let's see them at 40%. So then I'd change it to 40%. And then he'd say, well, let's add the side light. Let's bring up the side light to 75. Ooh, no, that's too bright. Let's go back to 70. Well, maybe I was wrong. Let's go back to 75. And this goes on for several series of systems of lights. And then he'll say, great, I like this. Let's record this look. So then I would tell the computer to record the cue so that we could play it back later. And that's the nuts and bolts of it.
It almost kind of sounds like painting in a way.
Well, there is certainly that element, and it's one of the reasons why I, as a designer, mind you, not as a technician, but as a designer, it's one of the reasons why I decided to go the route of writing rather than lighting design. There's an element of what lighting designers do that one could say is painting with light, with these different systems and different colors specifically. And although I was extremely good at recreating other people's lighting from a technical standpoint, because that's what you do when you're on the road with shows that have already been designed, and your job is to implement that in every tour stop. But there was an artistic leap, and almost an artistic leap of faith that I didn't quite get, and that was this idea of painting with light that I couldn't quite get on with my own work. But when I sat down to write a poem, I was able to achieve it.
Now, you are still heavily involved in theater, I understand.
I am. Yeah, I am. The Martha Stewart show is over. All shows that we work on eventually close, even Cats, even A Chorus Line, even Phantom, although it's still running. This year, I've done a lot of stage management for dance, and pick up jobs here and there. Fashion Week happens twice a year at Lincoln Center. They take over Damrosch Park. I'm involved in that crew. As I mentioned, I'm stage managing a show for college, Marymount Manhattan College in New York City. That's going on now. I'll go there later tonight. I sub on a couple of shows. Again, I sub on Broadway for Chicago the musical. I sub on the off-Broadway version of Avenue Q. I sometimes sub for the Manhattan Theater Club. You never know when you're working freelance, you just never know when the phone's going to ring, or these days someone's going to send you a text message and say, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" Or it keeps life interesting.
Definitely does seem like that. We have been speaking with Andrew Blaise about lighting, acting, and creative writing. Andrew, it has really been a great pleasure to have you here on Radio St. Rose, and I thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Blaise. Best of luck to you and your listeners, and never be afraid to take that flying leap of creativity.
And I want to thank you for listening to this episode of The Conversation on Radio St. Rose. To listen to this as well as past shows, please go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Radio St. Rose Conversation. Until next week,